Joe, how much more of your spin can you put on this offense with the full offseason as opposed to being thrown into the fire later portion of last year?
Yeah, only time will tell. Look, at the end of the day, this is Josh Allen's offense, right? Like you're gonna put together the offense around the guys that you got. So for us to just say, hey, we're just gonna scrap everything and everything was broken, that wasn't the case, right? And so there'll be some elements of things that I believe in, but it's more of like, tell me who we have on our football team and the guys and what they can do well, and we're gonna do that.
Hey, Joe, is the terminology really different from last year, even if the plays are sometimes the same?
Well, I think the way you kind of look at it is what's going to slow your players down, right? And so, like, there's certain things that, Josh Allen's been doing for years here, and last thing I want is for him to have to think. I'm out there and making some calls. So if there was things that, I feel like from a learning standpoint that would be easier for the guys to maybe learn, we'd look at that. But other than that, if it's something that was going to slow 17 down, not changing that.
Joe, what do you be Josh's offense, but there's a lot of new pieces to it. How do you integrate all that stuff, and is it almost a clean slate when it comes to getting some of these receivers up to speed and offensive linemen up to speed?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the exciting thing about it, especially nowadays. Like, you got to be really intentional about it, because at the end of the day, look, there's only, one guy in the receiver room that's even caught a ball from Josh in a game. And so every rep in practice, the individual, there's such an intention behind what we're doing and why we're doing it, and for him to get a comfort level and a feel of some of those guys. And so, yeah, your offense is Josh Allen's offense, but it's also about what your players do well, and you're going to put them in. So this is the time right now that we're experimenting with some things like, hey, can this guy do this? Can this guy not do this? And we'll continue to evolve. And so, come September, we're hoping that we'll have a good feel of them.
There's some elements that you believe in. There's some elements that you believe in. What are those?
In terms of, like, at the end of the day, the most important thing to me is that guys are intelligent football players. Like, I think there's one thing to be a smart football player. Like, I went to William & Mary. I was smart. I can tell you what I had, but then when I went out there, can I apply it? When the picture changes and now football's in the gray, it's not just black and white. And so I think the biggest thing is, you want intelligent football players that can take the coaching, can take the teaching, from the classroom out onto the field, and then when it changes, can they adjust? And so I think that's the most important thing. And then just guys just playing together. I think the guys last year, obviously it wasn't exactly how we wanted and didn't want it how we wanted it to end, but the guys kind of played together, and it's about understanding that, hey, in this offense, everyone is going to eat, and they got to have the mindset. And it's not just about one person. No one's bigger than the offense, but in order for someone else to have success, I got to do my job so they have success, and then vice versa. And so that's the biggest thing that, we're preaching right now.
Building off that point, Joe, you're vacating, or I should say 241 targets are gone out of the building between Stephon and Gabe. How do you kind of go in the lab and come up with a way to kind of replace those without saying it's got to be one guy, it's got to be another guy, we have to have a certain amount for everybody?
Yeah, you don't just sit there and just say you're just going to replace a player, replace a scheme, or targets. Like, every year is going to be different, and to me, it's the biggest thing is just as you're going into it is all right, hey, what do these wide receivers do well? And let's find ways to put them in those positions. And right now we have a lot of newness in that receiver room, and there's so much good and so much excitement with it. And so I think it's important for us to not sit there and focus necessarily on, like, man, we have to replace this. More so as like, hey, you know what, every season's going to be different. The numbers are never going to be the exact same. And let's just figure out how we can get our players in the best position to have success.
Just had to account for Diggs, in a big way, because he was the number one target. What do you think about not having that element, and will defenses have enough to, like, a main thing they feel like they have to stop?
Yeah, I mean, I guess this only time will tell with that, right? Like, at the end of the day, when you played the Buffalo Bills for however many years, you had to worry about Stephon Diggs, right? And that is different now, but you also had to worry about Josh Allen, right? And it's a quarterback-driven league, and at the end of the day, fortunate that we still have him, and the offense will still run through him, and we'll have to adjust, and we'll have to get a feel of how teams are playing us, but we feel, obviously we're a few days in, but we're excited about the group that we have. When we get out there on the third down situations or in certain situations, figuring out who they're going to take away and kind of going from there.
Second half of the season, Cook really got going. I think your running efficiency was maybe number one in the league. Second half of the season, what do you think about Cook's development as a weapon? And part two of that is, how important do you see the play action passing being a threat?
Yeah, I mean, it all goes hand in hand, right? You're trying to be two-dimensional as much as possible. When you're living in a world where you can only throw the ball or you can only run the ball, eventually it's going to run its course, right? And, teams, you got to continue to evolve year to year. And so, whatever success we might have had last year running the football towards the end, we're going to have to continue to evolve that. You can't just pick it up and just continue to do the same thing. James Cook, excited about the progress that he showed at the end of last season, and the mindset and the work ethic that he's having right now. That you hope he's a guy that's going to continue to take another step. But love everything about James Cook.
Last year, James had, I think it was 280 some touches, which is more than he had his whole college career. Do you have to find a way this year to incorporate, whether it's Ty Johnson, Ray Davis, whoever it is? Do you need to maybe dial back James's usage a little bit this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that is kind of, we'll see. We'll see how, as he's kind of going with it. We feel confident in the room that we have that whoever's playing running back and carrying the football, that they're going to do a damn good job. With regards to setting a certain target number, I think a lot of that is just kind of seeing how his body holds up and throughout the season, what he can do. And it's the same thing from a running position, is we're going to figure out what runs those guys do a good job of and kind of put them in those positions. And I think a guy like James, he's physically in a better shape than he was. Like, you can look at him, and I can tell he put in a lot of work this offseason. Like, he looks different and in a good way. So I'm excited to see, the type of run style that he kind of plays with this season.
The Curtis Samuel you watched on tape in Washington, how has he grown from the Curtis Samuel we had in Carolina?
Curtis, I think a big thing, just not necessarily with Curtis, but just with all guys, is like sometimes you sit there and you have a vision how they were used, but that doesn't mean that there's the only way that they can be used, right? So I think a lot of times we just see a guy and it's like, hey, what's the vision you have for a player? And it's like, well, I just saw it on tape, so that's the vision. And so what's exciting about a guy like Curtis is when I was with him in Carolina, there were certain things that he hadn't done prior that, the more that we had an injury to our running back position, was like, oh, you know what, Curtis can do this, or hey, you know what, let's put Curtis outside and he was able to adapt and adjust to that. Same type of football player. Like, he's extremely bright. He can play any of the positions, play inside, play outside, play in the backfield, whatever he needs to do. And so I don't see any difference in the style of play. One of the best blockers I've been around. So, the more Curtis Samuel's on your football team, the better.
You looked pretty excited when the call was being made to Keon to draft him. What was your assessment of him going up to the draft, and how do you kind of view what his role can be in this offense? Yeah, no, I'm obviously a big fan of Keon. It's you go through a draft process. You make sure you're dotting every I and crossing every T's, and that doesn't mean you're always going to be right. But we were sold on the type of person he is, his work ethic, his play style. And he has a skill set that, we felt like we didn't have in the room that, continue to evolve. He has traits that you look for and skills that you think you can develop, and, with a great mindset. I think you guys all naturally see, probably last time he was in this room, he is a character, with it, but at the same time, like, he works. And you can get on him, you can correct him, and he's not going to blink. He's going to, grow and he's going to make mistakes, and he's going to grow with it. And so I've been pleased on the way that he's kind of been progressing. It's only been a couple days. And the vision for him in the offense, look, I think a lot of that's going to is on him. Like, so we told all the wide receivers, like, your usage, your mindset, the amount that you play or don't play, it's going to be on you. And that's what I love about this receiver room right now, is they just come to go out there and they just work. There's just a lot of energy, a lot of juice, and a lot of competition. And it's from a play calling and from a coordinator perspective, it's a lot of fun.
When you think about how happy-go-lucky, the two things that you mentioned about Keon, how happy-go-lucky he is, but there's also a self-assurance. He's also very self-assured and mature and focused on football. What do you make of that for a rookie, no less?
Yeah, I mean, look, we promote personalities here. Like, we want people to play to their personality. Like, if you're loud, be loud. If you talk, whatever you got to do, but just make sure you're doing it with us, with the way that we kind of do things. And, so a guy like him, the happy-go-lucky that you kind of talk about it, like, at the end of the day, when the ball's snapped and when he breaks the huddle, like, he has a mindset and, he has a job to do, and he's going to make the main thing the main thing. And I think that that's the most important thing with our guys, is like, hey, if you want to talk. If you want to be loud, but when the ball's snapped and we're out there making sure we're doing it the way that we, at our standard.
With a guy like Khalil Shakir, came around really a lot towards the end of the year. Was everything on his plate last year? Because there's a thought of how much more he can be in this offense. Is it routes and different things for him? Does that expand this year, or was everything really there for him and it's just maybe more opportunities this year?
Yeah, it's. I think the biggest thing with any receiver, that was his second year in the league, right? And so you're going to continue to grow, you're going to continue to develop, you're going to get a feel of defenses and how to run routes and leverages, and there's so many more elements than just running routes just on air. And seeing his evolution last year was huge, and he's an extremely bright player. Like the intelligence that I talk about, like that is Khalil Shakir when he's out there and his feel of the zones and understanding of the man, can play outside, play inside. He's everything you look for in a wide receiver. And so from the evolution of next is a lot on Khalil, and fortunately his work ethic and his approach, there's no reason he can't, and just getting that chemistry with Josh on, different type of routes and as we go from there.
What does it mean for you to have this opportunity again? I know that you had it last year, but there was an interim tag on it. But now that that's not there, does this feel especially satisfying given the way it ended last time, or just how do you feel about it all?
I mean, I wasn't satisfied the way it ended last time. I have a passion for calling plays strictly from a play standpoint, but I also have a passion for teaching and coaching and being around the guys and seeing them party in the end zone. And so I love that relationships element of it, and I didn't do a good enough job of it in my last stop. So this is a great opportunity for me to dive into the players, and not just the player element to it, but the person. And so I got pride in this job. I have so much pride in this organization. You live in Buffalo, you know how much the Bills mean to it, and being the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills, there's a lot of expectations, and I don't believe anybody rises to low ones. And so I'm appreciative of the opportunity, and I want nothing more than to deliver for this city, for this organization.
Work on some of the changeover in the wide receiver room. You also have some of that up front on the offensive line. Without Stephon Diggs, obviously that changes kind of the scope of the offense. How do you expect the changes that you're experiencing up front? Do you expect any changes in that regard, and how do you see that transition so far?
Yeah, I think no matter what, whenever there's change, there's going to be some hiccups. There's going to be some, I love that we're making some mistakes right now, both up front or from the quarterback position or front, because it's opportunity for growth. If we're out there and we're just executing, everything's perfect, you're not going through some of the tough things. And so sometimes it's just a simple thing of, hey, communication from up front to the quarterback, or hey, the quarterback sees a receiver run a certain route with a different indicator, and it's oh man, he was speaking to me differently. And so I think that, yeah, we have a different center, and we have, so just them getting on the same page. And that's not saying that they're not right now, but there's going to be some things that come up, and that's okay. That's part of it. We don't play a game tomorrow. And so I've kind of embraced the mistakes right now of guys, let's own a mistake, but it's going to happen. A game, you make mistakes, it's 6 seconds. I'm not going to let it affect the rest of the game. So let's see how you respond with it, and let's grow and learn from them.
Made at the start of last year about the two tight end set. Dawson was kind of hurt when you took over. I'm not sure if you used the two tight end set all that much when Dawson came back. What are your thoughts of it on it, and can you incorporate that, and what are the advantages to having that?
Yeah, I think, look, at the end of the day, we're going to try to put our best 11 on the football field, and week to week that might change, depending on the matchups that. Because you're not just necessarily just attacking weaknesses in defense. You're just trying to find your strengths and attack the weaknesses, right? And so some weeks that might be 12 personnel, some weeks that might be 22 personnel. And so I think that kind of varies. I think that there is an advantage sometimes of just being able to be versatile in different types of personnel groupings and whatnot. When you have guys like Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, I mean, it gives you a lot. It opens up a lot of doors, because they can play outside, block in line, and then it just goes week to week, just depending on how teams. There's always sometimes an understanding of, hey, how are they going to play at 12 personnel? So there's so many different variables to it, but would love to grow that package and just get them comfortable and putting them in different situations, different spots that they haven't been in, and see how they kind of respond to it.
How can Miles Curry help you and help the offense, and given your relationship and you knowing what this offense needs in the relationship with Josh Allen?
Yeah, RC's he's been incredible. I share an office with him in New Orleans, and he was huge for my growth, and a guy that played wide receiver in the NFL, played quarterback growing up. So has played at the highest level and also sees it from a quarterback perspective, but also can teach it from a receiver perspective. And that's huge because like when we try to teach wide receivers here, we don't want them to just know that we want them to understand where they are in the progression, understand why you got to get in that depth. So from a quarterback coach to be like, hey, look, I've taught the receivers this is what this is how they're thinking it. It's huge for a quarterback. So he's been great. He's a lot of help for me just in terms of like, hey, communicating. Hey, do you see it this way? How do you, that communication I think is so important from the quarterback coach and the OC. But he's been great in the QB room to the point that I can feel comfortable, not always having to be in there and being able to go around in some of the rooms. And I'm appreciative of RC being here. He's done a great job so far.
With the new center and then Spencer being a little dinged up. How important are the physical reps now of having all 5 offensive linemen participate compared to maybe training camp?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, right now we're in just helmets, right? We're in hats and t-shirts, so it's really it's always going to be a passing camp and OTAs, right? Like there's only so much level of physicality you can kind of go at. Spencer, like I'm excited for Spencer, even though he is a little, not out there kind of doing all the things, but he's able to do a lot of the physical activities that lower body that hasn't been able to do, in the past. And so I feel great for Spencer as his work ethic and how he's kind of going about it. I think we have time that those guys are going to get on the same page. We're doing so much together. They get so much indie communicating, doing stuff together. We have the best offensive line coach in the league that, when that time comes, I believe we'll be on the same page.
Edge did you see Ray Davis run with on his college tape?
I didn't see it just in the running. You see him how in protection. You see him with just the ball in his hands. He's a football player, and you can't have enough of those. And he brings a little different elements, both in the pass game and in the run game that we felt like was a great addition to him. But I'm sure as you guys get to know the person, unbelievable person, incredible story, and you see that in the way he plays football.
Said this is the time to experiment out at practices. How does that play out in the meeting room when it comes to dialogue with the opportunities that guys have to say, hey, let's try this. I believe this is my strength, so can we implement this in the offense?
Yeah, look, I want communication. Like I believe communication, collaboration, like that's what's going to lead to success, right? Like I don't have all the answers. And so I think it's important for the guys to, hey, this is what I believe, this is how I see it. But hey, when you're out there, do you feel it that way? Hey, coach, if they're having the communication now and we're having the talks now and they feel open to come up to my office to be able to talk through some things, well, when it comes into the season, when maybe there is a lull or stuff's going on, they feel comfortable enough still having those conversations. And so right now it's great opportunities for dialogue, to see things, great times for, the quarterback and the receivers to get together and be like, hey, this is how I see it. This is how you're kind of speaking to me, with your body language. And so the communication element is just as important as anything right now.
What did you like about Van Granger and his ability to maybe carve out a role early in his career?
Well, I mean, just take the football element out of it, just the personality. Like when you play at a school like that and you're a 3-time captain, that doesn't happen. So just the type of person you're getting, the type of work ethic, the type of preparation. So you're getting a football player doing everything, all the right things off that. And then when you get him on the football field, I mean, he's going against the best of the best for 3 years and didn't flinch. So having the ability to be athletic enough to be able to do everything that we look for in our center and be stout, and give a nice pocket for the quarterback. I mean, we didn't think he'd be around that time, and we were happy that he was.